All right, Shalom Israel. The Israelite School, Universal Practical Knowledge, started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commander Junior Yohana. We're not affiliated with any other Israelite group nor any other Christian organization. All right, tonight's class is the Lashawan Qadash class. Every class I make sure to tell, like, Lashawan Qadash is a very important class to attend. You don't want to take it lightly, all right? Like, this is a part of our culture. This is a part of our heritage. Like, this is the language of our forefathers. Like, a language separates a people from another people. Like, these are things that we do have to realize. If you have a language to yourself and to your own people, like, you can tell someone who someone is, like, based off of the language that they speak, all right? And so, this language, all right, this language is what's going to separate us from the rest. This language is going to separate us from other races and nations and people, man. All right, this is our culture. This is our heritage. This is something that we really need to, something that we really need to look into. All right. The first letter we got on the screen is your Ah. You got your Ah in the Syrian. You got your Ah in the ancient. Next is your Ba. You got your Ba in the Syrian, and you got your Ba in the ancient. This is the letter Ga. This is your Ga in the Syrian. This is your Ga in the ancient. Next is you have your Da. You have your Da in the Syrian, and you have your Da in the ancient. Next you have your Ha. You have your Ha in the Syrian, and you have your Ha in the ancient. Next is you have your Wa. Your Wa. You have your Wa in the Syrian, and you have your Wa in the ancient. Next you have your Za. You have your Za in the Syrian, and you have your Za in the ancient. Next you have your Cha. You have your Cha in the Syrian, then you have your Cha in the ancient. Now remember, you want to study this right here. Your Cha. You want to make sure like you're scratching the back of your throat. Yeah, ha, ha. All right. Next, you have your ta. You have your ta in the Syrian. You have your ta in the ancient. Your ta. This is your ya. You have your ya in the Syrian, and you have your ya in the ancient. Next is you have your ka. You have your ka in the Syrian, then you have your ka in the ancient. Make sure you focus on this ka as well. It's found at the end of a word. Next you got is your la. You got your la in the Syrian, and you got your la in the ancient. Next is your ma. You got your ma in the Syrian, and you got your ma in the ancient. Next is your na. You have your na in the Syrian, then you have your na in the ancient. Next you have your sa. You have your sa in the Syrian, and you have your sa in the ancient. Next you have your I. You have your I in the Syrian, and you have your I in the ancient. Next is your pa. You have your pa in the Syrian, then you have your pa in the ancient. Next, you have your taza. You have your taza in the Syrian, then you have your taza in the ancient. Next is your kwa. You have your kwa in the Syrian, then you have your kwa in the ancient. This is your ra. You got your ra in the Syrian, then you got your ra in the ancient. Next, you have your sha. You have your sha in the Syrian, then you have your sha in the ancient. And next, you have your tha. You have your tha in the Syrian, then you have your tha in the ancient. All right. So we're going to go back where we left off. All right. All right. So the last verb we used was shalak. That was the last verb we used. So let's erase it. We're going to use a new verb. All right. So we're going to go over the past, the future, and the present. All right. So tonight's class, we're going to go over the past, the future, and the present. And then we're going to go over what we'll do is we're going to use the subject pronoun atha. So before I get started, does anybody remember why the subject pronoun is so important? Does anybody remember why the subject pronoun is so important? When it comes to conjugating verbs and working on the past, the future, and the present, can anybody tell me why is the subject pronoun so important? The subject pronoun is exactly what I'm typing in right now. Anybody remember why it's so important? Does anybody remember why the subject pronoun is so important? All right, Khan Salaki. Khan, that's definitely correct. All right, give Chuba Yagadar a hand because everything is based off of it. The reason, so when it comes to subject pronouns, everything is based off of your subject pronoun, all right? Everything. You cannot conjugate a verb unless you know the subject pronoun, all right? And so now, let's see. Let's use Zabak, all right? Sabak meaning to sacrifice. Back a little. Let's see if I can try to comfortable. A little better. All right. So we're going to use sabak, meaning to sacrifice. All right. So let me get that written up there. All right. So zabak, meaning to sacrifice. All right. And what we have here. All right. So zabak, meaning to sacrifice. And the subject pronoun that we have here is your atha. All right. So now remember, keep in mind, everything is based off of your subject pronoun atha. In this case, we're going to go through the past, the present, and the future when it comes to conjugating. All right. So now, does anybody remember the rule? How would you conjugate zabak in the present tense based off of the subject pronoun atha? Does anybody know how we would do that? And you can do it in the masculine form. The masculine form. All right. Because atha is talking about you, meaning you could be anyone you're talking to. You could be feminine, you can be masculine. So in particular, I'm asking, does anybody remember how to conjugate uh, the the uh, the verb zabak based off of the subject pronoun atha, but in the masculine tense? Anybody want to give it a shot before I write it down? Does anybody remember the process? All right. All right, I see everybody. Give Chuba Yagadar a hand. That is true. In the present tense. Khan. In the present tense. Khan, that was real Tawab. Chuba Yagadar. Khan, that is absolutely correct. So so instead of saying kha at the end, remember it's cut off. That ah from the kha is cut off, so it would be zawabak. It would be zawabak. All right. So what the brother said was absolutely correct. All right. So you have zabak. Zabak meaning the sacrifice. Remember, all conjugations are based off of the subject pronoun. All right. So keep that in mind. That all of the conjugations are based off of your subject pronoun. In this particular case, we are conjugating the verb based off of the subject pronoun atha. Right? Atha meaning you. Now, if you look very closely on the conjugated verb, all right, I kept the letters in blue because you want to look out for root words. You want to notice the root word. Your root word is very important. You cannot forget it. Everything has a root. All right, this is the root word. All right, this is the root word. All right. And so if you noticed, I put the wa in the letter red. And the reason why I put the wa in the letter red, so you know that's the conjugation, that you can identify the change based off of the subject pronoun. So the subject pronoun is in red, the conjugation itself is going to be in red, so you know the difference. All right. I just want you guys to notice the difference. All right. So you guys can visually see the difference. So in this case, zawabak would mean you sacrifice or you are sacrificing. All right. Now remember, the present tense is just you speaking in the present tense. So if you say, "Hey, you can be even asking, you can make it a statement depending on how you say it, or you can be asking a question based off how you say it. You'd be like, "Oh, you sacrifice?" You would say, "Oh, zawabak," is in form of a question, or you'd be like, "Oh, zawabak," meaning you sacrifice, or are you sacrificing, or are you sacrificing? If you want to say, are you sacrificing, or you are sacrificing, same thing. Are you sacrificing is more so of a question. You are sacrificing is more so of a statement. And either way, let me actually write that down so you guys know. So you guys are not. Mm-hmm. All right, so you guys see that on the screen. So zawabat can either mean you sacrifice, you are sacrificing, or are you sacrificing? All right. You can form it into a question if you would like. But you guys do understand how that can be so, right? How it could be. Does everybody understand how it could be those three things? Let me know if y'all need me to explain it a little more. But does everybody understand why it could be those three things? Why Zoabak can be you sacrifice, you are sacrificing, are you sacrificing? Because all of those things are in the present tense. Some are just questions, some are statements, right? Or whatever the case may be. Is all context is everything. How you present it and how you say it is everything. Our language is more so, context based. Just like every language. Every language is you're gonna have to have context to it to understand if it's a question, is it a statement, is it a demand, like what is it? So when you're getting into stuff like this is stuff to look out for. So if you truly want to start reading the Hebrew, once you really start digging deep into reading the Hebrew, you want to look out for these things, because now what you want to get used to over time is translating it yourself. What I mean by that, all right, let me explain what I mean by that. Is when you're reading the Hebrew, you can translate it into the English while you're reading it. Like you want to be able to get to the point where you're reading in Hebrew and you don't necessarily need the English next to it. You can put it in your own words what the scripture is saying in the English. I'm saying, I'm not telling y'all to break it down. I'm not telling you. I'm saying when you read it, it's almost like you're saying it in the English in your head. Like that these words, like, okay, if I say a thigh and I say zawabak, right? In my head, it's already saying, oh, you sacrifice, or it could be saying you are sacrificing, or are you sacrificing? Like those things automatically come up in your head. That's what I mean by you want to be able to get to the point where when you're reading the Hebrew and when you're reading the Hebrew, it's almost like your brain is constantly translating it into the English to the point where you don't need the English next to it to see what it's really saying. Now, of course, we have it there because so everyone else knows what it is. We also have it there so just in case if we really don't know what this word may be from the English to the Hebrew, we still go back and forth because that's the point. You want to be able to learn. All right. Now, you're not going to know every word in Hebrew. All right. You're not going to know every word in Hebrew. There's different words that mean different things. There's different words that mean the same things. One is just better used than the other. One might be a higher vocabulary word than the other. Like for an example, you have the word crazy in English. Well, there's more than one way to say crazy. One way, crazy and insane, they're two different words, but they mean similar things. One is just used in a different context or whatever the case may be. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? So you're not going to know every word in Hebrew. All right. Just like you're not going to know every word in English. There's a lot of words in English that we don't know. And when we come across them, what do you have to do? You have to look them up to see what they mean. That's not abnormal. But, there is a but. Rather, this is why we have this right here. Because these are verbs that you have to know. They're common. You get my point? Like these are the most these are verbs that you have to know. Like you should be able to list them off one day as second memory. Like I could say zakar meaning remember, the sun meaning to give, ahad meaning to love, laquak meaning to take. Uh, let me think of other ones. Bana meaning to build. Um, or zabak is a sacrifice. We're doing that. I'm listing ones on the top of my head that I could think of. Halak meaning to go. Yalak also meaning to go, but more so. Well, I mean halak meaning to walk, but more so to go. Yalak meaning to go. Like these are things. Dabar meaning to speak. Amar meaning to say. Like you want to be able to eventually. Um, you want to be able to try to do your best to remember these verbs like mawath, or is it mawath? Right, right, mawath meaning to die, things like that. Like you want to be able to do your best um, to remember these verbs. All right, like not dissolve, meaning to deliver. All right. Now, there's more than one way to say deliver, but the most common is not dissolve, meaning to deliver. Does everybody understand where I'm coming from with that? Try to remember these verbs because these are the verbs that you have to know. It's like, remember when you're in, you're in elementary all the way to middle school, you're learning the English language. And of course, while you're learning the English language, there are common verbs that are always used, like to run, to walk, say, speak, eat. Eat meaning a call in the Hebrew, by the way. That's another one, right? Eat. Like these are common verbs that you can't say you don't know how to say. Like they're basic words that you have to know how to say. And they're verbs, but these are basic verbs and words that you have to know to say, or you would be considered not so smart or not so bright. Does that make sense? So these are these kind of words. Like you have to know, like, okay, this means that or this means this, because this is how you're going to be able to communicate in Hebrew on a basic level, to lay something down, to lift something up. Like these are things that you're going to have to know. Let me go back to the screen. I believe that's one of the things. Right, to lift up, nasha. All right, it's like in nasha, to lift up, nasha. Right, to lift up, nasha. Then you got to lay down, shakab. Shakab meaning to lay something down. So if I tell you to lay something down or put something down, I would use the word shakab. If I wanted to use the to lift something up, I would use the word the sha or slakia. Right, nasha. I will use it or it's like in the sha. It's like in the sha. All right, I would use something like that. I believe it's nasha'a. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's nasha'a. Khan. I would say nasha'a. Like nasha'a meaning to lift up. All right, nasha'a. If I want to say, hey, can you lift that up for me? I would have to use the verb nasha'a. If I say, hey, put that down or lay that down, like let's say I'm telling my kids to put something down, there's a verb that says to lay down, shakab. Or if I even tell them to lay down, let's say you want to tell your kids to lay down, go to bed, shakab, lak lamamata. All I said was go to bed, lak lamamata. All right, go to bed. The yalak, I dropped the ya and I just said lock. That's a lesson within its own. Salaki. It's like I'm shortening the word. I'm taking the ya out and saying lock. Then la meaning two, then mamata meaning bed. So go to bed, lock la mamata. So I'm telling them to go to bed, but I would say shakab, lock la mamata. Of course, that's without conjugating the verb. If I'm talking to all my kids, I would have to conjugate it based off of the subject pronoun. You all. Cause I'm talking to y'all, like y'all go to, I'm pretty much saying y'all go to bed, right? Like you all go to bed. That's pretty much what I'm saying. In in retrospect, even though it's just coming out of my mouth, go to bed. I'm just saying go to bed, but I'm talking to you all. I'm talking to you all y'all kids. Talking to you all. So because I'm talking to you all, I would conjugate the verb based off of you all right, and then I would just say go to bed in Hebrew, all right, which that would be shawakabium, shawakabium, all right, shower. So I would say shawakabium, lak lamamata, y'all go to bed. Now, do you guys kind of see I did that? Let me know if I'm like losing anyone. Like this is how you eventually going to learn how to create sentences and things like that. Am I losing anyone on how I was able to create that sentence? Because that's what you're gonna have to do. Like you're gonna have to be able to like vision how you want to say it. And you kinda have to get used to thinking like, okay, it kind of makes you think because in English we automatically do it. And more so in English, it's like, it's like a second nature to us. But in Hebrew, you kind of have to think about it at first. In order to structure a sentence, you're gonna have to know who you're talking to. That's where the subject pronoun comes in. Even though you're just saying go to lay down, go to bed. Just saying lay down, go to bed. That is a sentence in English. That's a perfectly fine sentence in English. You be like, hey, lay down, go to bed. That's a perfect sentence, right? Nothing wrong. It's grammatically correct and everything, right? But now in Hebrew, right, you have to think about it a little more so you know how to conjugate it. Because now you got to dig a little deep. Okay, who am I talking to? Okay, I'm talking to kids. Okay, I'm talking to my kids. So in retrospect, I'm talking to them, right? So I'm talking to them in the sense of you all, because I'm really saying you all lay down. I would, and if I added y'all lay down, go to bed, that might help you understand where I'm coming from. I'll say, hey, y'all lay down, go to bed. That y'all is now the subject pronoun. Now you know how to conjugate it. Of course, we don't always say y'all. We can easily say lay down, take yourself to bed. Everyone knows who we're talking to. Everybody knows exactly what we're trying to say because that subject pronoun is not always needed, just like in English is not always needed. Y'all lay down, go to bed. Lay down, go to bed. I'm saying the same thing just without the subject pronoun, and it's still being directed to y'all or you all. Let me know if I lost anyone there. Does everybody still get what I'm saying? Let me know. Khan or la'a. So when we go back, all right, perfect. Khan, okay, Most High in Christ. Now that was the conjugation in the present tense. All right, we were just doing the present tense just then. All right. So zawabak is how you would say you sacrifice, you are sacrificing, are you sacrificing in the present tense? I don't know how I seen those little blue dots without my glasses. Pretty impressive. All right. So now, what we have on the board now is your zabak. All right, you have zabak. Zabak meaning to sacrifice. Right, zabak meaning to sacrifice. Where are all these views coming from? 1 second. If there are people logging in, I would not know unless y'all bear with me just a little moment. So you have zabak. Zabak meaning to sacrifice. Remember, everything is based off of your subject pronoun. All right. So you have the subject pronoun atha. All right. Now remember, atha is in red. The conjugation on the verb is also in red. So you guys can see where the conjugation is. Because remember, root words are everything. Root words are everything. You want to know the root word. The root word in this case is zabak, meaning to sacrifice. Now this is in the past tense. All right, this is in the past tense. And so how you would do so is you would add a tha at the end, all right, of the verb. Now this goes for any conjugation. I mean, this goes for any verb. You can substitute any verb you would like. If you are trying to conjugate it based off of the subject pronoun the tha, but in the past tense, that tha has to be there. So it's zabak tha. And second thought, let me add something there so you guys know. All right, I'm gonna add that there. So that's zabak tha. So zabak tha, zabak tha. So zabak tha meaning you sacrificed. Now you can word this however you want. You can, I mean, what I mean by word it, I mean you can say it as a question, or you can say it as a statement. You sacrificed. All right. Be like, oh, you sacrificed, or you sacrificed. Either way, it's the conjugation sabakta. So ata sabakta meaning you sacrificed. Now remember, no matter what verb you put into place, that tha has to go in the end. And when I say this, when you get into the past and the future, well, when you get into conjugating verbs in general, like this is why it's so important to know root words, so you're not confusing that this word may be zabakha. Some people may like, oh, this means zabakha. All right, no, it's sabakta. It's sabakta. Okay, all right. You want to be aware that it's a conjugation referring to you sacrifice. And to be exact, a good example to tell the difference, because sometimes it can be zabakah. All right, let's go to Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 23. I believe sacrifice should be in here. I know wave offering, meat. I know of course, all the meat offerings and all that. Let's see. Okay, Lazabak. That zabak doesn't have to be conjugated because it's being used for a for a sacrifice of peace offerings. It doesn't have to be conjugated in that case. But I believe that Aisha meaning to make. Aisha means to make on most things, but to make an offering, all right, to be offered, all right. So these are things to be done, all right. Of course, because sometimes to make or the verb Aisha can be used in context of sacrificing or offering, all right. That's why it's Aisha instead of Zabak in that case, all right. I can see why it's there, all right. But you see what I mean? It's a perfect example to understand when I was saying sometimes a word can mean something in Hebrew. Make and sacrifice can be interchangeable depending on how it's being used in context as everything. Crazy and insane are similar words, but depending on context, it depends on how you want to use it. All right. But that's not a good example of what I want. I want to be able to see sacrifice conjugated, I believe. All right, that's what I'm looking for. Give me a second. I don't believe that shouldn't be conjugated either. That zabak shouldn't be conjugated as well, right? Because it's not. Doesn't have to be conjugated. All right, let me see. Should be a conjugated zabak somewhere. Let's find it real quick. I can show y'all an example of how to look at these root words. I can't find it. If I can't find it, it's not the end of the not the end of the world, but I would like to have an example because I know you guys understand, but I would like for you guys to see what I'm talking about. All right. All right. So this is a good example. It's an example. All right. But it's one that I would have to I would have to change the subject pronoun for. Let me see. I seen something on the. Hold on. Salakia, I was looking at it in Genesis 31:54. Let's try Genesis 31:54. Okay. Let's do Genesis 31:54. Let's see what the brother's saying there. That might be what a good one I'm looking for. I can come back to the Exodus one because that's a good example of the future tense though. When it said we may sacrifice, that na in front of the zabak, that na is the how you conjugate it, by the way, in the future tense. For a knock now, meaning the subject pronoun we, but I don't want to have to change the subject pronoun in order for you to understand it. But that is a way. What does the brother say again? Genesis 31:54. Let's see. Okay, this is what I saw, but is it conjugated though? It's not conjugated. I figured that it's not conjugated. Right. I figured it's not conjugated. And the reason why is because I believe that's Yaquab. It's not conjugated. Technically, it is conjugated, and I believe it's conjugated based off because what is it saying? Then Jacob offered sacrifice, and I believe that is in the. Hold on, I believe it's not in the present tense. I want to say it's in the past tense, based off of the subject pronoun he. But let me double check. Right, correct. All right, yes. So, okay, when it says then Jacob offered sacrifice, you see how it's left alone and it's just the bak? Because this is based off of the subject pronoun. This is based off of the subject pronoun he. So this is saying Jacob he sacrificed. Jacob he gave up it. So okay, you know how it says then Jacob offered sacrifice? Imagine if it said then Jacob he offered sacrifice upon the mount. It's saying the same thing but without using the he there. So Chuba Yagadar, this is no. You're fine now because this is good to get everyone to understand how important it is to understand how to conjugate verbs. So what the brother was bringing, what the brother brought out was very heavy though. So when it says in Genesis 31:54, then Jacob offered sacrifice. Now it may seem like the word sacrifice is not conjugated when you look at it in the Hebrew because you see nothing there. But this is a conjugation within its own because when you conjugate a verb based off of the past tense, off of the subject pronoun he in the past tense, I should say. So when you're conjugating a verb based off of the subject pronoun he in the past tense, you leave the verb as is. You don't have to do anything with the verb. All right, that's the rule. You don't have to do anything with the verb. So because you don't have to do anything with the verb, when you see then Jacob offered sacrifice, think about Jacob is the noun, right? But he is the subject pronoun because this is being written. Moses wrote this. Okay. So it's not like Jacob is writing it and Jacob is speaking for himself. This is Moses. This is Moses writing it, right? This is Moses writing it and saying Jacob, he offered sacrifice. Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount is really saying then Jacob, he offered sacrifice upon the mount. I'm saying the same thing just without the subject pronoun. Does everybody understand what I'm getting at? How that's done in this case as well? Y'all kind of see where I'm coming from when I say those things? Let me know if you guys understand. Like, hopefully I didn't lose you. But with the brother, this was a good scripture to kind of point that out too. Let me know if you guys understand where I'm coming from with that. How if you guys are confused, don't I'll be able to unconfuse you. If it's not even in tonight's class, the more because we're going to be doing these conjugations, all right, and we're going to play with the conjugations, all right. So, but let me get the future tense for y'all. So remember, zabakta, meaning you sacrificed, all right. Focus on the conjugation. Find the root word and notice that this is the conjugation, all right. Okay, right, Khan, because subject pronoun is Jacob, he, it stays the bot. No, right, exactly. Okay, Khan, give Trooper Yagadar a hand. So he definitely so you definitely understand Most High in Christ. Right, the subject pronoun is Jacob, right? Jacob was put into what Trooper Yagadar is saying, by the way, so I can get everyone else to understand as well, because what he said is very heavy. Trooper Yagadar said Khan because subject pronoun is Jacob. He, it stays the bak, no tha, right? It stays the bak. Now when Trooper Yagadar said Khan because subject pronoun is Jacob, Jacob was put in place for he to give you a specific he. All right. So when you go into Genesis that you've seen, right? Then Jacob offered. If you take out Jacob and say, then he offered sacrifice upon the mount, right? You would probably see the subject pronoun he there, or you would just see sacrifice there, right? That's all you would really see, right? You wouldn't see the you would just see Waya Zabak, right? Meaning then he offered, right? Literally is that Yazabak, and he offered, even though it says then offered, it's saying and he offered, all right, Waya Zabak, Yaquab, all right, and then this is something else, all right. This is also Zabak. So when we go up, then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount. That Zabak, the first Zabak, is referring to the offered. The second Zabak that's not conjugated is the Zabak. All right. In this case, it's a sacrifice here. The first Zabak is offered. The second Zabak is sacrifice. Same word, means the same thing. But you see, this is a specific pronoun. Jacob is a he because that's a pronoun for a man. Okay, because God cares about pronouns. All right, God is not like America that doesn't care about pronouns and God cares about pronouns. All right, it matters if it's masculine and feminine, and all those things play a part. All right, so Jacob is a specified pronoun, but you could easily say he there, and it'll still mean the same thing. That's pretty much what I'm getting at to all the Akim and Akwashim out there. Hebrew, you can kind of play with it. You can kind of do what you want with it as long as it's grammatically correct. All right. But that Zabak right there, that Jacob is a specific pronoun. But now let's go to the go back. All right, so now you have Zabak. So now the subject, now this is the future tense. Did I get okay? So you have the subject pronoun atha. If you want to conjugate Zabak in the future tense based off of the subject pronoun atha, all right, you put a tha in front of the verb. So it'd be tha Zabak. And tha Zabak meaning you will sacrifice, meaning it's a statement, or will you sacrifice? Okay, which is like a question. You will sacrifice, will you sacrifice? It means both, depending on how you say it. One is a statement, one is a question, but the common denominator, the tha has to be in front of the zabak to mean it. All right. Now, if you want to say, will you be sacrificing? Right? That's not the same thing. Will you be sacrificing is not the same thing. All right. It's not. Just to let you guys know, will you be sacrificing is not necessarily the same thing. All right. You can. Okay, well, actually, if you want to ask, will you be sacrificing? You can still put Tazabak to make it easier, not to overcomplicate anything. If you want to say you will you sacrifice, or will you be sacrificing? That's where I want to get to. That's what it is. There we go. All right, there we go. We got to it. All right. So Tazabak meaning you will sacrifice, or will you sacrifice? But let's say you want to say, will you be sacrificing? All right. Can anybody tell me how many tenses are in that sentence when I say, will you be sacrificing? How many tenses are in that sentence? And tell me the two tenses. I should say, tell me the two tenses that you hear in that one sentence when I say, will you be sacrificing? How many tenses? What are those two tenses that you hear? Right. Give Chuba Yagadar a hand. You will hear the present and the future. And so now keep this in mind because you hear the present and the future. Here's the golden rule. Y'all hear it? Here's the golden rule. Only one, only one of those verbs have to be conjugated. Now, what verbs are there in that sentence? Let's see who's paying attention. Let's see. Will you be sacrificing? Name me the two verbs. What are the two verbs in that sentence? Will you be sacrificing? What are the two verbs? There's two verbs in that sentence. Will you be sacrificing? Tell me the two verbs. Only two of the verbs, only one of the verbs are going to be conjugated, and the other one doesn't have to be conjugated in order to mean or in order to structure the sentence you want to be structured. Just to give you guys, I'm only saying this so you guys can have a understanding. Okay, not so much will. Not so much will. That was good. That was very good. Sacrificing is one of them. But to give it to you guys for time's sake, the word be, the word be is a verb. To be something, the verb. Like if you go back to Spanish, if you say to be something, like I'm to be this way, like I'm good, be right. Should we give Chubi Yagadar a hand? He probably already got it. So like you give Chubi Yagadar a hand, he said be because that's what it is. All right. He probably got it before I said it. But right, meaning be. All right. Will be, will is just to let you know it's in the future. But the be is the verb and sacrificing or sacrifice is the second verb. And so what you would do in Hebrew, if you have two verbs in one sentence, so you guys know for future references, only one of them have to be conjugated. So you would conjugate the word be in the future, and then you would leave zabak alone, and it would say zabak, and zabak would mean sacrificing. So if I wanted to ask you, will you be sacrificing? Zabak would be sacrificing would just be zabak. You don't have to conjugate it in the present tense. It doesn't work that way. You good. As long as you conjugate the first verb to let them know if you're asking them something in the future, like will you be sacrificing? Sacrifice the you not sacrifice. You would conjugate the word be, and which would be tahawiyah. That's not tahawiyah. Tahaya. All right, tahaya. All right, because the word be in Hebrew is haya. All right, that's how you would say it, haya. So tahaya. So will you be sacrificing? Tahaya zabak. Will you be sacrificing? Tahaya zabak is how you would say, will you be sacrificing? Tahaya zabak. Because you would conjugate the haya first, which is to be. So tahaya zabak. Will you be sacrificing? That's how you would do it. But Thazabak, it says you will sacrifice or will you sacrifice. But if you want to say will you be sacrificing, it's not this technically. All right. You would because you're trying to imply that there's a present tense in there too. Right? Of course. So you would have to conjugate the be first. All right, which means dahaya, then zabak. Everybody get it? That's how it would be done. Now, slang wise, can you use dazabak to be like, oh, will you be sacrificing? And slang wise, yes. But to be grammatically correct, and if you want to truly structure the sentence really based off how you're saying it, you would have to conjugate the be first, tha hayat, then leave zabak alone, and it still means sacrifice, sacrificing, whatever the case may be. Everybody, everybody get it? And give young man Nathan I said Nathan, so like it. Uh um young man Nate a hand, Mosiah in Christ, right? Be in sacrificing. All right. All right. So be in sacrificing, those are the verbs. All right. All right. So with that, Israel, Shalom, Yahweh Bashem, Yahushua to the brothers. All right. And Shalom, Yahweh Bashem, Yahushua, Yahweh Shemar Lathan Bashem Yahushua. Let me start that over. I think I mixed the salutes together. All right. To the Akim, Shalom, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua B'Katham. All right. And then to the sisters, Yahweh Shemar Alathan Bashem Yahushua. I believe I combined them together. That's what it sounded like. Salakia. All right, but that is that's it for the time for class. All right, make sure you guys study. I'm gonna be sending out some more notes. Like I'm gonna send out some more documents so you guys can start studying the Hebrew as well and stay on top of it. All right. So with that, shalom.